was the craziest scandal that happened at your school? There was a scandalous news story about how an art teacher allegedly made a girl pee in a bucket in the classroom storage room. But what the news story failed to mention was that the school had recently implemented a new rule where during certain hours of the day, students in certain classes were not allowed to take bathroom breaks. This was one of those occasions, and I felt so bad for the teacher because she didn't want the girl to pee her pants in front of her classmates. We had a fake student enrolled at our school, who had created this elaborate backstory of being a foreign student. It was later proven he was a grown adult and a wanted criminal. Our elementary computer lab teacher was arrested for embezzling funds out of fundraisers that the kids participated in. One of the fundraisers was just your typical, hey, we're raising money for your school, sell enough poop and you get a party bus and pizza. It wouldn't be that infuriating if it stopped there. There was a girl in my grade who was diagnosed with brain cancer and leukemia at a young age, and battled her whole life. During elementary school, we raised funds to take care of her treatments. The computer teacher was best friends with her. In fact, she was the only person the computer teacher remotely liked. And guess what? Computer teacher stole money from her fundraiser too. A popular kid in my school faked his cancer diagnosis. Even went so far as to shave his head and everything. His equally popular girlfriend floated the idea around that the school should have a fundraiser for him, which they did. They raised nearly $12,000. The whole thing came crashing down when the school contacted the parents to give them the money, stating, "We hope it'll help offset some of the costs for his treatment." To which his parents were not aware their son had any scheduled treatments, let alone cancer. Dude really thought the school was just going to let him walk home with $12,000. The school ended up refunding the money to everyone, which caused problems because the fundraiser wasn't handled very well to begin with, so there were a lot of discrepancies over who donated however much. They changed the rules the following year, saying fundraisers could only be held for school events now. The boy who faked his diagnosis never came back to the school, although he had to write out an apology that got sent home along with the "if you donated money, see, person in charge of refunding" letter. His girlfriend still tried to convince people he really had cancer and the school just didn't want to pay the money. A month later he apparently left her for a girl at his new school, so she began telling everyone he lied about being sick, to which everyone was like, "Yeah, dummy. We know." Within the first 3 years of its opening, it broke the district record for the largest cocaine bust in a high school for the whole county. We were officially the Dr. D school for years until our rival school broke a record with heroin. Not really a scandal per se, but I'll never forget this. When I was a freshman in high school in the late 80s, we had a pay phone in our cafeteria. Now remember, at that time, we didn't have any sort of caller ID or anything. A sophomore thought it would be funny to call the White House and threaten to unalive President Reagan. 2 periods later, about 90 minutes, the FBI or the Secret Service was at my school arresting him. I'm not sure how they figured out who called and from where, but they definitely did not find the humor in his joke. So at my high school there was this kid who dressed up in a banana costume and ran across the football field during the homecoming game. He was chased by teachers, coaches, tackled, the whole 9 yards. After the stunt he was suspended for the rest of the year and was going to be expelled. Enter the hashtag #FreeBananaMan movement. Students began running a black market that sold hashtag #FreeBananaMan t-shirts, and it became crazier as the principal of the school banned the t-shirts. You'd think this would just kind of fizzle out after that, right? Wrong. The ban didn't just stop at the t-shirts. The absolutely batch T crazy principal extended the ban to the phrase banana man, the actual fruit itself, and, oh yay, the color yellow. No poop. She literally banned a whole effing color. This of course just made the student body declare all-out war on the ban, and kids began to chant "Free Banana Man" during lunch blocks, which consisted of hundreds of students at a time. It was a big high school. Dudes would come to school with only a yellow shirt on, get told to take it off, and then proceed to walk around shirtless, and kids with potassium shortages were forced to go to the nurse because they couldn't eat their bananas. This last item is what broke the banana stem, as it were, because the parents of those poor, banana-less kids threatened lawsuits against the school. Within a week the principal was politely asked to resign by the school board, Banana Man was freed with an official apology from the superintendent, the yellow market was legalized, and the student body enjoyed bananas for lunch as a show of solidarity with our hero. Someone put N-word, 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 we don't want your Black History signs on the black students' lockers during Black History Month. Chaos ensued. Lots of finger-pointing, tension, anger and accusations. Never found the culprit. Come 1 year later, the same thing happens again. Absolute poop show. Administration is all over it. Bring in the FBI and fingerprint everyone who was at home sick, off campus or otherwise in the hall during that period. Come to find out it was a black student who was doing it herself to try and get her parents to let her transfer. It was a predominantly white private school, so local media was all over it. Heaven knows what it would have looked like in modern social media times. Tucker would have been streaming from our football field and the View would have had a round table in the cafeteria. We were doing Punnett squares for a blood test. A girl in my class asked if she was doing it wrong and our biology teacher looked at it and said, "No, you did it right, they aren't your real parents." Understandably she was an emotional wreck and she found out she was adopted as a baby from Africa. Because of that they stopped doing that project. 3 girls stole the car keys of a girl they were bullying, took the car out on a joy ride during lunch even though none of them even had a permit. On their way back from lunch, they ran a stop sign going double the speed limit and hit a motorcyclist. The motorcyclist lived but was paralyzed from the waist down. The passengers were only suspended for 3 days. The driver's family had to pay out in a civil suit to both the motorcyclist and the girl she stole the car from, but she was spared jail time because her family had money. She also became ineligible to apply for a driver's license until she was 31. My significant other goes to gangbangs during quarantine. Okay, so this is a lot for me to unpack. Little bit of context. Been dating my 19F, so 22F, for 9 months now. She's bi and I'm still discovering myself a bit. It's been a good relationship aside from occasional arguments about my religious values. I was raised Catholic and prefer to save myself till marriage. We've fooled around a bit, but nothing too much. Hadn't really dated anyone before and she really got me out of my shell. She's a bit of a private person. I always assumed she was introverted like me. Didn't think she was intentionally keeping secrets. For the last 5 months or so, she'd been going to group therapy sessions. It made me worried that she might be depressed. Sometimes I'd ask if I could go with her, but she'd get defensive and say it's too personal for her. I respected her wishes but felt shut out. Sometimes I'd notice her texting members from the group. It was like she had developed a new friend circle that I wasn't allowed to meet. So goes to these meetings on a bi-weekly basis. The meetings were still happening during quarantine, which surprised me. We live in the UK and things are pretty strict here. Only strange thing I noticed in the past was a weird phone call I got from her. Heard some heavy breathing, like she was suffocating. I freaked and started screaming for her to answer. She said, "Pocket dial, oops," and hung up. I made her explain it to me when she got back, and she said it was a super emotional session. Fast forward to this week. We had a fight about sex, specifically my hesitation of it, and I told her it doesn't help that she is so distant. We started to calm down a bit and she asked what she could do to open up. I said going to one of her counseling meetings might be a start, but she got very defensive. Told me I was being too invasive and shouldn't give her ultimatums. I wasn't trying to force anything. It was just a suggestion and I'd never want to make her uncomfortable. We didn't really talk after that argument and things were worse than ever. Last night so went to one of her group meetings. I decided to follow her. I know this sounds really SH-tie of me, but after that pocket dial and everything going on I had to know what was up. I thought maybe I could speak to a head counselor or something. Tell her I loved her and was worried. Maybe we could figure this out together. I follow her to this old-looking community center. Nothing weird, right? She goes in and I start to second-guess what I'm doing. Think it over in my head for a good 15 minutes or so, then decide to step in. I'm pretty tense as I do this, feeling so much guilt. Walking through a hallway when I hear a faint music coming from one of the rooms. Figured it must be a social event. As I walk towards it, I hear music and noise coming from other rooms. I open the door and briefly notice some people going at it. Embarrassed, I quickly close the door and go to check one of the other rooms. I gradually open another door and peer in carefully. Even more confused as I see people sprawled across the floor having sex. I think the floor had mattresses on it. And at the back of the room I saw my so grinding against some stranger. I was in shock and darted out of the building. Don't think she saw me. I've been typing this out over and over, trying to come to terms with it. Haven't spoken to her since she got back. She probably thinks we're not talking cause of our fight. I don't even know who I can talk to about this and feel so isolated not being able to talk about this with so. I'm kind of freaking out about her not social distancing. She's the only person I have physical contact with, and this unnerves me now. How can I broach this subject with her? Is there any way I can talk to her without her feeling spied on? What's the best way to resolve the tension between my values and her romantic needs? I know this is a lot, but so much is going around in my mind right now and I feel like my trust has been violated. I don't hate her for this, it's just a lot to process. Any advice would be really appreciated. Final boyfriend wants to be poly. I spent Thanksgiving with my family and it felt so refreshing to be by myself. When I came back, I went through the motions of masking. It was almost Christmas, his birthday was coming up, his dead father's birthday, and it was just hard for the both of us on these dates. The week before Christmas we had plans to have Christmas early with his family. I was flying later that week to spend Christmas with mine. I don't remember how the argument started, but it ended with my yelling at the top of my lungs that I didn't want to be with him anymore and I didn't want that other woman in my life. Period. Full flipping panic attack, but I was going to get that point across. He waited till I calmed down and asked if I still wanted to go. Obviously, no. He went by himself and I spent the day thinking. He spent the night at her place and I woke up with a plan the next day. I grabbed all the family and friends' presents. All his friends and family. I drove and dropped them all off. He texted me that morning, asking if I could attend if he wanted me to go. I told him no, I had no interest. On the way to drop the gifts off, I switched my flight to that same night. He came back later that day and without a word, I grabbed my stuff and left. He didn't even know I was flying out till he saw my location in another state. I was done. Basically told him, I wasn't coming back until he left my house. By the beginning of 2023, he was out of my house and I came back a week later. Walking into a semi-empty house, I thought was going to be hard, but I was so relieved to have my house by myself. I was free. I'm free. I've spent the last few months really focusing on myself. I spent some time and money refurnishing the place to make it mine. I spent the last few weeks traveling by myself and loving every second of it. I have no one stressing me out when things aren't perfect. I have no one to ask me what we are eating. I just live how I want and do what I want. And it's great. I've realized how much gaslighting and brainwashing I've withstood in the past years in the name of love and care for someone else. Ladies, trust your guts. Trust your guts. He literally purposely made me feel like I was going crazy on purpose to satisfy his needs. That is so effed. I finally got my answers in the end, and I've never been so satisfied. It wasn't me. I wasn't crazy. It's over. Cheers to that. For anyone out there struggling with a similar situation, I can't suggest focusing on getting out or therapy. Emotional abuse is a form of abuse. It comes in different shapes and sizes. You should be your number one.